We're going to take a look first at the management functions that are available in the Business Plus Accounting Hotel and Property Management software. To access the Hotel module, simply select the Hotel Management button from the main menu in Business Plus Accounting. Before we start looking specifically at the management functions, let's take a little bit of a tour of the software so you'll understand what the functions are referring to and kind of how things are set up. From the hotel menu, you have the option of going into the front desk, which is where reservations and transactions are processed. You have the option of going into the manager functions, which is where you would deal with the setup and what we're going to look at in just a minute. Employees can clock into the time clock using the employee time clock function, and then of course you can exit the software. If we take a look at the front desk functionality, just to give you an overview of how things work, employees are required to log in before they can access any of the functionality of that screen. So we'll go ahead and log in. We have to sign in as ourselves in the hotel management screen. And if you just take a look real quickly at this screen, some things that you need to be aware of is that the screen is divided into 14 different tabs representing different types of rooms. Now we've set the limit to 14 room types, but you can assign whatever rooms you want to these tabs, and we'll take a look at how that works here in just a second. Within each tab you have the rooms that are specific to that type of whatever you've actually assigned to that, and you can specify what's assigned there. But we also have this All Rooms tab. The All Rooms tab is different because it's going to show all of the rooms in the hotel assembled together on the one page, so you can view their current status. You can work with those rooms and do whatever you need to do. So the first thing that you need to do in order to start using the software is get your rooms defined and set up onto the tabs here in the front desk screen. And so let's go over with that in mind to the Manager Functions section, and we'll take a look at exactly what we're going to do here. Now if you look at the hotel management functions, we have several definition functions which are on this side of the screen, and then you have some shift management functions that are over here on this side of the screen. We're not going to look at these right now. We'll take a look at those later, but let's review really quickly what the process is going to be that you go through in terms of the definitions to get your hotel set up. So to get your hotel initially set up, you're going to go through a series of steps for hotel definitions. To begin with, you're going to define your employees, and that's going to include a unique ID number that each employee will use when they're logging in and out of the software with the time clock. You also have the option in our software of using employee cards that can be swiped just like a credit card. You can contact us to purchase cards that are compatible, and then you just need to make sure that you have card swipes on your terminals so that the employees can use those cards to clock in and clock out. The next step would be defining your rooms. Now to define your rooms, there's kind of a series of steps that you're going to go through. First of all, as we pointed out, you have 14 room tabs in the front desk screen. Now 13 of those you can specify the captions on to be whatever you want them to be, and then one is the All Rooms tab. Once you've grouped those together and decided how you're going to put those onto the front desk screen and assigned the tab names for those tabs, then the next step would be to define the room types and the rates. This is where all of the information relating to how much you charge is going to be defined. So you'll define specific room types, and then you'll create rooms, room numbers that are assigned to each one of those room types. We'll take a look at how to do each one of those steps. Once you've created all of your rooms, then the next step would be to assign rooms to tabs. Now that's done based on room type. You'll be able to take one specific room type that you've defined and assign all of the rooms of that type to one of your tabs. Finally, we'll take a look at the miscellaneous definitions. There are several options there that affect how the hotel transactions are processed, as well as some of the other functionality in the software, and we'll take a look at the employee scheduling module. First thing that you'll want to do as you're getting the software set up is define a list of your employees. So you can select Define Employees from the Manager Functions menu. You'll see the Add, Modify, Delete menu, which allows you to work with the employees that you have, or from here you can also access the employee schedule. To create a new employee, select Add, and you'll have the new employee screen. Now, there are several pages worth of information, but most of what we need for the hotel software we're going to focus on right here on what's on this page. For more information on what some of the other fields of information are for and how they're used, you can look at the employee definition section in the standard Business Plus Accounting video training series. But what I'm going to do here is just create an employee, give them an employee number and a name. So we'll call this guy Joe Blow. And he also has a salesperson ID. Now for the sake of the hotel software, what works best is if we use the same employee number as we do salesperson ID, just to eliminate any confusion. For the rest of the information that's here, most of it is not specific or applicable to the hotel software, with the exception of this option to allow non-approved clockouts. Now this is also going to affect the restaurant software if you're using both packages together. But this software will allow the employee to clock out without having a manager enter approval for that clock out in the software. So we're going to go ahead and say yes to allow that. If you say no, then in order for that employee to clock out of their shift, there's a manager function that has to be completed to actually authorize that clock out. For the rest of the information, though, it's not really applicable for the hotel software specifically, and so you can reference the standard Business Plus Accounting video training for that. So we've now created an employee that we can work with. If we wanted to modify that employee, we can use the Modify button to do that, or we can come back to this menu and select Modify, at which point it'll give us a list and we can pick the employee that we want to work with. So let's take a look now at the process that you're going to go through to set up your rooms in the software and get them assigned to that front desk screen. As we discussed earlier, the first step is to use the Assign Room Tab Names function to set up the names of your tabs. Now, as we said, we've got 14 tabs. The default tab, the first tab, is the All Rooms tab, and so you'll leave that one alone. And then the rest of the tabs you can assign however you want. Now, we've created a basic structure for assigning those or naming those in our software, but you can change these to whatever you want them to be. We've assumed that when a customer calls in, they'll be saying, I want a king room, or I want a double queen room, or whatever, however they're going to ask for that based on what the occupancy of the room is and the type of accommodations and beds that are in there. You can define these however you want, and you'll be able to assign the rooms to those. So if you don't want to have, if you only have a couple of kings and a lot of queens, you could use one of the room type tabs for both your kings and your queens. Or if you wanted to combine smoking with non-smoking, I guess that's the way we've set this up. So even though you'll have room types for a double smoking room and a double non-smoking room, those are set up to all go onto the same tabs. One thing that I do like to do to kind of make it easier on your employees as they're working with this screen is when you have a tab that you're not going to be using, you're not going to be putting anything on that tab, then you can just blank out the caption or the tab name for that tab, and that'll provide less information on the screen that the employees have to process to figure out what they're doing. So just based on those simple changes, if we were to then go take a look at the front desk screen, we can see that some of these tabs now have no value on them, so that the employees aren't going to see those and try to decide whether that's the tab that they want or not. The next step after you've set up your room tab names is to actually define your room types. Now in the room types screen, again, there are several room types that we've defined by default in the software, and you can use our room types that we've created, or you can get rid of those and create your own. But the room types typically, the important thing to remember when you're setting up your room types is that that's going to be tied to the pricing that you charge. So we've set up some common options: a double room, double non-smoking, and then the same setup with king, queen. So those are the basic room types that we've set up. Now you can define one of those. You can edit an existing room type by simply selecting the pick button and then picking the room type that you want to work with. If you want to create a new one, then you would select Add New Room Type, and you would key in the information relevant to what the room type is going to be called and what the description is going to be. But I want to work with the existing room types that we have, so I'm going to go back to our double room here. And what you'll see is, in order to define a room type, you have first of all a room type code. Now that code is going to appear on the front desk screen on the captions of the buttons so that you can see what type of room each room that you have assigned is. And then you'd have a description, a more fleshed out description of what that room type is going to represent. The next field that you have is the multiple guest number. This represents what the standard occupancy of that room is going to be, up to 4 guests. And then the next field would be the max number of guests, which would be the maximum number of guests that you're going to put in. Now if you look down here, you'll notice that there's an extra guest rate. So the extra guest rate would be applied to any guest beyond this number of guests that's booked into this room. So you can add for extra occupancy on the room. The next section down here is all of the pricing. Now we provide 7 price rates that can be assigned to each room. The rack rate typically represents the standard rate that you're going to use, and then you have some different high rates, which might be for holiday or high traffic times, and then some discount rates for times when it's harder to book out the rooms. And so you can specify for each one of those periods what the rate is going to be. And I've gone through and set up some sample rates here based on a single double bed room And 4 guests might not be very realistic there, but the numbers will work for the sake of our demonstration. So you have the single guest price, which would be the standard guest or the standard price that's charged for that room if there's only one guest. You have the multiple guest price, which is the price that would be charged if more than one person is booked into the room, but it's within this number that's defined as the multiple guest number. Then you have the extra guest number, which is the amount that you're going to charge for each additional guest beyond the multiple guest count. And then finally, you have the ability to charge a premium for rooms on the weekend. Now, over in the miscellaneous definitions, which we'll look at in just a minute, you can specify which days of the week you're going to consider a weekend date, and you're going to apply that extra plus or minus to. Finally, you have the ability to set up a daily rate or a monthly rate if you're going to be renting your rooms out based on a weekly or a monthly occupancy. So that's the basic definition of the room types. You can use the next and previous buttons to cycle through. As you can see, the only thing that I've set up pricing for right now is the doubles, but you'd go in and set up all of your pricing for all of your different room types using this screen right here. One other important thing to note on this room is that as you define each of these rates, and they correspond to rate 1, rate 2, rate 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, you do have the option in the miscellaneous definitions also to specify which rate is going to be the default rate that you use for rooms. So you might specify that the rack rate is the default rate, and then if you choose to rent out a room using one of the higher rates or one of the lower rates, you have the option of selecting that at the time that you create the reservation. Step in getting the rooms set up is going to be actually to define the rooms, or to define the room numbers that are associated with each of the different room types. So we can select Define Rooms, and we'll come up to the Define Rooms screen. Now here in the main portion of the screen, you'll see all of the information that you've already defined based on the room type that you have selected here. So to create a new room, we've already assigned several rooms, but let's create a second floor of rooms. So we'll start with room number 201, and we're going to specify what the room type is, and it'll tell us you've already used that, so we're not going to be able to do 201. Let's do 301. And so let's then specify what the room type is. We'll make this a double queen. And you can see down here, here's all the pricing information that we've already set up for a double queen room. Now I haven't set anything up under the product type, but if we had select, for example, the double, where we did set up some product pricing, you'd see all of the appropriate pricing coming in there. Now you next have the option of specifying whether or not this room is active or inactive. If you mark a room as no to mark it as inactive, then you won't be able to do anything with that room in terms of processing reservations. The definition is there and exists, but it's not available for any transaction processing. And finally, you have the ability to enter some notes regarding the room, anything that you want to keep track of internally relating to that room you can specify. So once we've filled out all of the information that we have, then we select the Add New Room button, and that room has now been added. Now you'll want to note that as you're going through this process, this screen is going to maintain whatever you've put into these fields. So in order to add a batch of rooms, you just need to key in each room. You don't have to reselect the room type every time. It'll remember what was selected last time. So you should be able to very quickly go through and add all of the rooms that you have. We also have the option here to view the rooms, so you can see a list of all of the rooms that you have defined in your system. You can move through those rooms using the next and previous buttons. And finally, if you needed to delete a room, then you can delete a room as well. Once you've added rooms to the specific room types, the next step then, and it tells you this here, would be to add the rooms to the specific tabs using the Assign Rooms to Tabs functions. You have to make sure, once you've edited your rooms, that you go reassign the appropriate room types to the appropriate tabs in your menu, or you won't see those rooms show up. So let's take a look at that process now, and that's available here in the Assign Rooms to Tabs menu. Now we've set up the tabs and what the text is going to be on the caption of each tab. We've set up what our room types are, and we've specified what the pricing is for each of those room types. We've assigned room numbers to each of those room types using the Define Rooms function. And now we're going to take those room types and we're going to assign them to tabs on the menu. So we simply need to pick a tab that we want to assign something to. And you'll see all of the tabs here listed with the alternate captions that you've put in. So I think we defined some kings. So we'll go ahead and select the king room, or the king room tab that we've captioned that way, and then we'll pick the room type. So now we're going to take all the rooms that are defined as a king type room, and we're going to put them on that tab. And so once we've selected both those values there, we simply select Add Rooms to Tabs, and those rooms will then be assigned to that tab. So if we go then and we look at the front desk screen, we use our cashier ID to cashier in, you'll see that here's the rooms that we just defined now as kings. They're appearing on that tab because we assigned that room tab type. Now the most typical scenario is going to be what we have set up here, where room tabs will represent, the tabs will represent the specific types of rooms that you have based on the occupancy, because that's typically how customers are going to call and want to look at the rooms. But you may want to set it up differently so that it's based on the floor, in which case you could have a room tab here that says floor 1 or floor 2, floor 3. The only thing that you have to remember while you're doing that is that when you assign rooms to a tab, you are assigning a complete set of room types all at the same time. So if you wanted to have king size, king bed rooms appear on 2 different tabs, then you'd have to define 2 different room types for king beds based on whatever the difference is, whether it's the floor or the theme of the room or the size of the room or other amenities that it offers. But using that series of steps, you should be able to get all of your rooms assigned to the system with the appropriate pricing and then displayed on the appropriate tabs so that they can be viewed and you can see what their status is.